What's up, my one maze? Ryan Jake Lamborn here. Yes, Dev. Gonna do a primer as promised on writing, storytelling. So, here we go. Games don't need stories. The end. Some of your peers might have said something like that before, and it's true that not all games need stories. Some games are brought down by having stories, but some games do need stories. Like, they won't function without a story at all. And any game can be made better by a story. It won't save a game, but it can make a good game into a great game. I think most people know this. So I'm going to assume you know a little bit about storytelling, you know, beginnings, middles, and ends. First off, big tip, have a good concept. Having a good, strong concept for a story is like having a good concept for your game, where it makes lots of other ideas pour out of it. You always want to have a really strong base for what you're making, whether it's a game or a story or a game with a story. So when you're working out your plot, probably heard this before, it's good to start with the ending. Know where you're going to. I mean, once you have the beginning and you have the ending, it's just a matter of puzzle solving your way to there. And the way you puzzle solve that is that you have to have a cause and effect chain. And what a cause and effect chain is basically just not being random XD, ass pulls, deus ex machina. A cause and effect chain is you have a plot point that leads to the next thing logically. Something happens, therefore some other thing happens. Because of that, this other thing happens. You want everything to sort of be reactive, like a physics experiment. Now, while you need that chain to keep everything logical and making sense and whatnot, you don't have to run through it all in a single sequence. You can, Pulp Fiction it and put it all out of sequence. Start in the middle, get to the ending, go back to the beginning. What matters in that chain is that in its original form, it makes sense. And for writing characters, whether it's, dialogue or just their behaviors in the plot, what they do, I feel like it's really useful to have some sort of relate them to yourself or to someone you know, just so that you can sort of instantly just pop into who they are and understand them. That's just something I do to make it easier to write for a character. I don't know, but I think that's probably a pretty common thing that writers do. And another tip is just always be feeding useful information to the player. Even if you're doing like flavor text can be important. It can be important to understand who a character is, what they're about, their personality. But if it isn't important for you to know who the character is, what they're about, what their personality is, then you shouldn't have flavor text there. You'd probably be best to just get rid of it. Less is more, less is more, less is more. And so that's the basics. That's it. I mean, everyone's seen movies and TV shows and played games and read books and taken English classes. I'm sure all of you, if not on the top of your head, somewhere in your brain, there is a storyteller in there. You just gotta pull them out, Be like your drunk uncle and really tell a story. But your drunk uncle. So that's it for like the basics, I guess. But I was thinking about this stuff as I had to make this video, and I feel like I've always had a kind of easy time doing this. I didn't think too much about it. I think I've done pretty good jobs with stories in and out of games. But because I've been okay at it all the time, I never really had to stop and think about why I was okay at it, what I knew. So, thinking about it for this video, come up with a theory, a game theory. I feel like I've kind of cemented maybe something useful. So there is one bit of text, probably the most influential bit of text about storytelling that there ever has been, is by Aristotle, called Poetics. I haven't read it, but I've read some stuff from people who have read it, and that's about just as good, isn't it? So Aristotle's Poetics was about storytelling in play forms. I'm not going to go into what he said exactly, but he did break down the storytelling and plays into a bunch of different aspects of it. And the first two aspects really stood out to me as having a lot of purpose in games. So the first two aspects, there's plot, and that's the things that happen. And then the second aspect is there's a theme, and the theme is the meaning of the things that happen. So in games already have plot, if you think about it. Things that happen, the gameplay, the players doing things, that's the plot right there. You got a plot already in that sense. What you're doing for story in a game is adding meaning to that gameplay, to that plot. So a very pure example of this sort of separation is a game like Portal, where you have all of the gameplay in Portal could just be by itself. It would be a great game just like that. I mean, it's a really interesting, fun puzzle game. And if it just, said this is how things work and that's it, it'd still be a good game. The majority of the storytelling in Portal is about giving meaning to what you're doing. So there's lots of triggers in Portal where you do something and then GLaDOS comments on it, and it just makes sense. You're the player pushing forward the plot by doing things, and the storytelling, the theme is giving meaning to what you're doing. I feel like any sort of game that is just purely gameplay, you could add a story to it and make it even better, possibly. Make a good game into a great game. So as an example, like Tetris, which is historically never had a story, I don't think. Well, there is something with the spaceship shooting off. I don't even know how that relates. But like Tetris could be about the Tetris pieces are asteroids that you're lining up so that you can make a hyperspace rail that launches warships into like light speed or whatever. It destroys the rail as they shoot off with all the forces. And you're shooting off these ships because there's a war going on, a space war, and so as you're screwing up, your superior is barking at you. Our boys are dying over there. Every moment you waste, 1,000 of our men die. We need to get reinforcements over. What are you doing? Because war is always deep, man. And that's how you could put a story in there. It wouldn't have to get in the way, just like Portal. It could just be happening while you're doing stuff, reacting to you. And that could potentially make something really amazing like Tetris even amazinger. Or it could fuck it up. I don't know. But there is another way you can look at this, and lots of games do it this other way, which is that games at their root, even if they're action games, are still about problem solving. I mean, everything comes down to problem solving in a game. And storytelling has this too. And how it has that is by neglecting to explain things to the viewer. And I'm sure we've all, experienced this. I assure you it's in your favorite TV shows and movies and books. The author isn't just going to come out and say, Terry is the killer. Right? He's gonna make you fill in the blanks, and that's not just for big things like that. It's all the time. Storytelling is a lot about not saying stuff and then letting the viewer sort of figure it out for themselves, fill in the blanks. You definitely feel more involved as a viewer when that happens, and the same is true for games. A lot of games are entirely based around this concept. Like adventure games would make no sense without a story. You need a story in an adventure game because a lot of the gameplay isn't happening in the game. An adventure game gives you some sort of puzzle, which is take this thing and then do this thing, and then put it there, and then this. It doesn't make any sense. Those things have to have some sort of context. It's got to be, give the umbrella to the guy, and then he won't get wet. Sorry, that's terrible. I should really plan these things out before I start talking. But you get what I mean, right? It adds a gameplay that doesn't exist in the game exactly. It exists in the player's head. I just made a game recently, which is entirely this. The game is just this moving the mouse mechanic. Without any context, it would just be telling the player to move their mouse to here, then move their mouse to there, and then you're done. And it would not be fun or interesting at all. But the storytelling context about social interaction means I just provide a scenario and I leave it to the player to figure out what they're supposed to be doing. And so they move around the mouse to move the character's eyes to sort of fill out this story that they're doing in their head, this problem solving that they're doing in their head. This is a very pure example of this type of storytelling based gameplay. But games do this all the time in RPGs and Zeldas and GTAs or whatever. You'll have, a character that's dying of thirst in a desert. The game doesn't tell you give the guy water. It just shows you this guy, and then you fill in that, oh, I have water, I could give it to this guy. And that's, a problem you solve just from the storytelling, the theming of this scenario. There's a lot of, modern AAA games that get called handholdy, and that's because they're doing it both ways, right? They're showing you the guy in the desert who needs water, but then they also put up a thing that says, give him water. Like, yeah, I could have figured that out, could I, game? It feels really insulting. For a game that doesn't have story at all, obviously having little objective things coming up telling you what to do makes perfect sense, and it wouldn't be insulting at all. So this is like a place where you're doing a bit of a balancing act between storytelling and gameplay. If you're gonna do storytelling, then you don't need to tell the player exactly what to do, and they'll enjoy it more once they figure it out, because that's more gameplay that they're doing in their head. So I'm gonna go now. And next week, nothing. There's not gonna be a next week. I'm not sure what to talk about anymore for Yes Dev. Tell me in the comments what you would want to know. I'll definitely do more Yes Dev in the future as I think about things, but this is about it, I think, for now. Maybe. Would you guys like to know about making videos? I mean, I've learned a lot of stuff making videos for Yes Dev and other stuff, and every once in a while, game developer needs to make a video for, promotional reasons. I would tell you about marketing, but damned if I know about marketing. I'll definitely make something to rail on RNG in the future. Look forward to that. But I guess that's it for now. Goodbye, my Wenemes. Goodbye. Goodbye.